Hello guys, welcome back to part 3 of our tutorial on our little Japanese lantern. So in the last part we finished our 3D model in 3D Studio Max and we exported it out, and in this part we are going to sculpt some high poly details in ZBrush. So let's just flick over to ZBrush here and we'll get started. So if you open up ZBrush, I'm using an older version, but you'll see something similar to this. I'm just going to hit the comma key on my keyboard just to get rid of that little menu and leave as a blank canvas. One little thing I want to add, when we export it last time, we exported our high poly version of the mesh as an FBX file. Now, it might not be the same in newer versions of ZBrush. As I say, I'm using an older one, but this version doesn't like FBX files. It wants you to import OBJ files instead. So I've already went ahead and done that in 3D Studio Max, but if you're following along my videos, just open up your 3ds Max file again and export it as an OBJ, just the high poly version. We can still keep the FBX of the low poly version. That'll work in Substance Painter later on, but just ZBrush does not seem to like FBX files. I keep forgetting that. My default is to export things as FBX. So let's see, on our right here we have Tool and we have Import. So we click on that and we just need to navigate to that place. And let me see if I can very quickly get to it. And we can see there, lanternhighpoly.obj. So if you have an OBJ file, this is what we want. So we bring that in, and we'll see it here on our list of tools, and we get all our other menus here. I want you to click and drag that high poly mesh out, and if you just hold the shift key while you're clicking and dragging, it will kind of give it the straight vertical orientation. There we go. So what we want to do here, we're not quite ready to start sculpting it yet. I want to just click this little edit button. We'll just click this little button here, make polymesh 3D. And what this allows you to do is kind of scroll around and look at the different parts of it, rotate around it, and we can start sculpting. There's a few other things you want to do first before we start sculpting. So let's get down to that. Now if I click here where it says Subtool, you'll see that it comes in just as one solid object. Now, in 3ds Max, we actually had separate objects with the little roof separate, with the lantern separate, the stock separate, etc. And if we do that, it'll make it easier for us to actually work on this thing. So what I want you to do is go down here in this little menu, click Polyframe. And when you do that, you'll see it'll actually change the color of things a wee bit. What that's doing is giving every piece of the mesh a different color. So all the separate objects, different color. And then what we want to do, on our subtool menu where it says split, click that and just hit group split. This is not an undoable operation. Press OK to continue. Yep, that's totally fine. And you'll see what's happened here is that on our subtool menu, based on the different objects that we had in the 3ds Max version, which we then highlighted with the polyframes, we now have them split into separate objects as they were in 3D Studio Max. Bit awkward that we had to do that, but ZBrush is a pain in the arse in general, so we just have to deal with that. Okay, at this point we're pretty much ready to start sculpting on our object, but we're still very, very low poly. If you look up here, active points, we've got a total of about 1,420. But in order to sculpt in ZBrush, we want this to be a lot higher. So what we're going to do is just piece by piece, we're going to divide it. Now I'm going to start working on the base because it's a very, very simple piece. And if we click this wee eye here, you see we can actually solo it out and just look at it alone. And I'll hold the Alt key and click and drag my mouse just to make that a little bit bigger. Again, ZBrush being awkward. Every single key binding in it is different to every other program you've ever used, but we just have to deal with it. So we're going to click on this little geometry tab here. When that opens up, we will uncheck this smooth button. Actually, let me show you why. What I want to do is click divide, but if I click divide, you'll see this happens and it loses its shape. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to uncheck this smooth button, and then I'm going to click divide again. Now look up here, active points. We only have 8 active points at the minute. That's because this whole shape only has 8 vertices. It's a very simple wee cube. So what we're going to do is divide it, and we're going to divide it. Click that button 4 or 5 times. There we are, subdivision level 8, and you can see we now have 98,000 points on this, 98,000 vertices. Looks the same, but we've actually subdivided it. Now what I'm going to do is just start sculpting really. I'm going to bring my intensity and my draw size down here. It's quite a small object, but now if we draw on this, you'll see that we're getting, let me just pull the intensity up there actually. You'll see that we're getting that surface detail. So I'm just going to Control Z that. At this point, yeah, we're really ready now to start sculpting. So what I'm going to do is come back up at the very top, and on our tool menu, just going to save that tool. Now that it's all prepped, I'm just going to call this PM3D Lantern High Poly. That'll be saved as a Z tool file. And really at this point, we're just going to start sculpting. So I'm not going to show you the entire thing. I'm going to show you a few different bits, and then I'll pause the video, keep sculpting, and then I'll show you my results at the end. So we've got this stone lantern here. What might we want to do? I'm going to take this brush. We're going to move from the standard brush, and we're going to take, let me see, clay tubes. Where's clay tubes? I can never find anything here. Clay tubes, there we are. Clay buildup actually. I'll use clay buildup. And what actually works quite well for some stone is to change your alpha just to one of these plain squares. So if we click on alpha, alpha is basically the brush shape, and that will control the shape of our brush stroke. So there you see we get a nice square brush. And what I'm going to do is turn the intensity way down, maybe the draw size up a bit, and I'm going to move the Z sub instead. So Z add, what's happening here is it's adding on and pulling out the way, but I'm actually going to hit Z sub, and what that will do is carve in the way instead, and I'll just give it that look as if this is an old piece of stone that's been chipped and worn away. The Z intensity might bring that down a bit, focal shift maybe bring it in, draw size maybe a wee bit smaller, and we're just going to leave this as freehand. Yeah, that's okay on freehand. That alpha's okay, temperature's okay. I'm just going to start carving in just a little bit, just very, very lightly, just over the surface here. Maybe bring that draw size down a wee bit, and Z intensity down a wee bit as well. We just want very, very light detail. And probably that big stroke there is a bit too much. But what I can do is hold the shift key, and I'll smooth that out again. That was a bit too intense. Or I can hold, no, I can't remember the keybind off the top of my head just to swap from Z add and Z sub. It should be the Alt key. No, it's not. Okay, I believe there is a key binding to just quickly go between these two. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we can. It's easy enough just to flick between the two of them. So I'm just going to very gently pull in some wee strokes there, just to break up the flat shape of this. I'm going very light, and maybe stroking over the same place here just to get a little bit of detail there. Now if you want, go back to the add mode and we can start building out some of these shapes. And we can change your draw size, we can change your intensity, whatever you want to do, it's up to you. I'm using a graphics tablet here, so it will give me a bit of pressure sensitivity, but you can do this with a mouse. Now the only thing with this alpha is you can see we're getting that very solid square shape there. So I'm just going to hold shift and I can smooth some of that out. And I'll not do this for all 8 sides here. I'm just going to show you on one side. But what we can do is pull that draw size way, way down, see intensity way down, and just do that on the corners as well. Go to Z sub, and we'll just sort of shave off those corners a wee bit. Even if we just hold shift and use the smooth key, that can take away those harsh edges there. You'll see that will soften those. If I zoom in here. that little black line there. If we just turn off polyframe mode, you'll see that disappears. And we'll do the same up the top as well. We'll just sort of trim down some of these corners, etc. So it will take you a little while to do that, but put a bit of time into it and it will pay off. You get some nice results. But there's other stuff we can do here as well. We don't need to just stick to this alpha. What you might want to do, you can import your own alphas as well. You can bring in your own. I'm just going to take something that looks a bit like these little dots here will do nicely. If you look online, there's plenty of brushes will already be made. I'll put that draw size up a bit. I'm just going to add in a wee bit of sort of stipply texture, as if this is some kind of made of limestone or some kind of porous rock. And there we go. So again, you're just going to keep building that up. You don't need to cover the whole thing, but just wherever you want. If you want to give it that sort of limestone texture, we can do that. Again, those little pivot holes always tend to be eaten into the rocks. That'll be Z sub, but we can always go back to Z add. We can change to, say, our regular round alpha. And what I'll do is I'll take, do you want to use the Dodge standard? Yeah, okay. Another really popular brush is the Dame standard brush. Let me see how we have our size here. This is really good for doing like things like wrinkles and things like that, but I'm going to use it just to add in a couple of wee cracks and things as well. So you can add a wee crack just to the rock. And you probably want to continue that on round. And I think we're still actually quite low poly here. You can see how blocky that appears. So what I might do is I might even divide this a bit more. I'm going to activate the smooth mode this time. If I divide again, that'll start to smooth these out a little bit. Divide once more. There we go. That's looking a lot better. You can still see if we zoom in way close, there's a little bit of a grid there, but that is so small that it won't appear on our texture size. And now we're up to 1.5 million polys for this little shape alone, which is a lot. That is a lot, but ZBrush can handle it. It'll be okay. So yep, we're just adding in those wee cracks and things. Draw size a bit higher, a bit smaller. And that, you see that's a lot sharper now. So again, I'm not going to spend ages doing this. You guys can spend as long as you want detailing this up yourself. I'm just going to move on. It's really easy to get logged into this actually, so I'm kind of just working away as I'm talking. But we could continue on with that. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch over to one of my other subtools. So once we've finished this and done everything we want to do with it, go back to your subtool menu, and we'll say just click on one of the other pieces. Let's take this now. And again, we can click our little eyeball here just to see the rest of the mesh around it. But what we can do is, even with that, we can bring the other ones individually in so we can see the base there. Now, I do recall I did want this wee bit to be stone as well, so we could do the same techniques that we were using there, the stipple and the cracks and stuff. And then we'll have this be wood on top. So what I'm going to do, if this is wood, what do I want to do? Well, first of all, I want to divide it. So we'll go to geometry. Let me just make sure I'm on the right subtool. Yes, I am. That's where we stuck. Go to geometry. Same thing again. Deactivate the smooth first couple of times. I'm going to divide. And there, I'm going to divide that 8 times until it's 1.2 million. And we can activate smooth there, but we don't need to divide it again. And there we go. We can start carving into that. So if I want this to be wood, And I'm going to keep these harsh edges, but we might just have some kind of very light weathering cracks going up and down that. What I should do, of course, is look at some reference material for wood, but I'm just going to keep this very, very simple. Just add in a few of these wee like sort of weathering cracks and things, as if it's been out in the rain and the water has got into the pores and the grain and stuff like that. Nothing too complicated. Let me start carving these in. I don't need to use that Dame Standard brush. I could also put in some wee chips against the grain, again as if maybe this is 100 years old and there's maybe been carts or boxes or God knows what have kind of come up against it and chipped it and dinged it and things like that, and there could be a sort of a lump out of it. You just sort of soften those edges a wee bit. Who knows? It's up to you entirely. Use your own imagination there, even though we changed to the clay build-up brush and Z sub mode. Make those a bit of a smoother, where's my wee square? Make those a bit of a smoother kind of transition there, like a little harsh edge. But I liked the Dame Standard brush there. Any brushes you use will come up with a quick pick, which is really handy when you're trying to find them. I find it very hard to find the brushes in ZBrush. Draw size small. What we can do is we can use the focal shift here to give it a smaller kind of interior and sharper fall off, things like that. So again, just play with it until you get what you want. You just keep working on these wee details, give it that kind of wood. Oops. Just keep giving it that kind of woody kind of texture. Tie those on up like so. Got a couple of lines. Where did they come from? Yeah, just my graphics tab will be a bit odd. There we go. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this too long. Pro tip, if you're doing a wood texture, make sure these lines continue all the way up. Don't let them just sort of taper off there. You can have kind of knots in the wood and stuff, but make sure they don't just disappear into nothing. Bring them all the way up. Again, assume this kind of lantern is made from one continuous piece of wood stock, one single log. So we would have sort of that grain going all the way around, and that would continue on as well around these corners. Okay, that'll do. The same thing. I'm not going to spend too long just building this up. Let me see, what other parts do we have in the subtools? We have this little piece. It's not really too visible. We're not going to see it too much, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. All I would really do is maybe put a couple of wee dings in there. Again, divide it as many times as you need to add in a few wee dings. I'm not even going to worry about it. What else do we have here? We have this little piece here. This does not want to see me appear. Just that little plate underneath there. We do have this one, which we can solo out. Again, we'll keep it light, just add a couple of wee light dings and things, maybe a wee bit of texture, and just as if it's slightly rusty metal. So we'll take this guy, geometry, divide him again. Oops, undo that. uncheck smooth and divide them a few times. And let me see, what can we do with this guy? Change our alpha. Again, bring in your own alphas. If you have something kind of rusty, this is kind of a cracks here. This isn't exactly what I want, but you'll see what we can do with it. If I change this from stroke, change it to drag rectangle instead, what this will do is it'll take just that one alpha shape. As I click and drag, it'll make it bigger, like so. Which doesn't really work with this alpha, but is a useful wee technique that you can do. Again, maybe bring the intensity of that down. Even change this one to add, just rough up that surface a wee bit. It's not perfect, it's not really what I want with that alpha, but just to show you that drag rectangle tool might be a lot better. This one might actually, I don't really like that either. You really do need to have your own custom alphas just to get the effect you want. I'm not even really sure what I want. Maybe this is what I want. This is just kind of like a sort of a light splotchy. Oh, saving. Okay. Thought I crashed there. Yeah, this one might be okay, given it's a very light kind of speck onto the texture. That might do. That's the intensity is a little bit too high. But just to give it that kind of look of old-timey metal, it's not very smooth and machined that you would get nowadays. Maybe just smooth a wee bit of that out. Just come out to him again. Just holding the shift key just to smooth some of that. And we can flip between Z add, Z sub. And it just gives it that sort of slightly rougher texture. Let me see what else we have. The main one that I really want to look at, because it'll be the most visible, is this roof. And all I'm really going to do with that is take each of these tiles individually, and I might go back to my freehand, and I'm going to use my clay build-up again and Z sub. I'm going to go very small size, and just on each of these tiles, if I can zoom in on them here, just start to carve in. Oh, also keep forgetting, every time we use a new sub tool, make sure to divide it first. So turn off smooth, divide, up to about 1,000,000 or so, and that's smooth. And yeah, that'll do. Freehand. So Z sub, we can just start carving into this guy. Start smoothing off some of these edges. Just give these each their own wee unique kind of shape. Again, what will be handy is if you look at reference material for how these kind of tiles actually look. That's something I should do, but we're just trying to rush through here, get this video done and not keep you too long. Turn the draw size up a wee bit. If I use a bigger shape to kind of carve in some big broad strokes onto those tiles, hold my smooth key just to try and smooth out some of that sort of weird shadowing we get from the brush. And then use a smaller brush just to kind of soften some of these edges. I'll even hold the shift key just to smooth those out. And with this as well, it's okay just to use the Z add button. I'm going to add a bit of height to these tiles if you prefer, rather than subtracting it away. That's all grand. But we just want to give them each their own wee individual bit of flavour there. Just to just so that when we go into Substance Painter, we can add a wee bit of detail to the normal maps and things. So if I hold Shift, I just want to soften some of those corners. That's my real objective here. If I turn the intensity up, we'll be able to smooth those a little bit easier. A little bit fiddly, you can see I'm trying to do this corner and it's appearing on there, but we just hold the Alt key and drag our mouse, getting as close as we can. Maybe I have to pull that draw size down a bit. Smooth key. So yeah, like I say, I don't want to be droning on too long on this. But that's the kind of the techniques you want to be doing, just to add a little bit of texture. Now, what we're doing here, we're just adding a little bit of flavor to our mesh. We're not using ZBrush to totally overhaul the shape of this thing. It's literally just to add a little bit of surface detail. ZBrush, you can use it. You could make this entire model in ZBrush if you wanted to. I'm not the best at ZBrush. I'm not the most familiar with it, so I really only like using it for adding this little bit of the icing on the cake, really. If you prefer, there are plenty of tutorials out there. I'll teach you how to use all the other features in ZBrush. The results you can get are incredible. I just don't like the interface, so I use it as little as I can get away with. And prefer to stick with a hard modeling software such as 3D Studio Max. But if you like what you're seeing here in ZBrush, you can use it for so much more than I'm showing you. I'm just using it for this one wee technique of just adding little bits of minute details onto the surface. But I'm going to leave it there on this model. And what we'll do is continue on in your own time, modeling it up however you want. You can even have a play in here and look at some of the other brushes. We've got polish brushes in there, you've got move brushes, you've got trim brushes, you've got all kinds of stuff. But the clay build-up, the Dame standard, the smooth brush, the standard brush, and just playing with your alphas, you should be able to get some good results with that. And if you want to get more alphas in there, just hit the wee import button, and that will let you bring in just black and white alphas. You can, if you look on Google, you can just type in alphas. Don't have to be specifically ZBrush alphas. An alpha for Photoshop will work exactly the same for ZBrush. So if you have some nice Photoshop brushes that you like, you can bring them into ZBrush as well. And yeah, we will leave it there just for this. Obviously, go and finish off the rest of it. That's what I'm going to do once I sign off this video. I'll go and finish off the rest here. But once you have it detailed up as you want, just how to finish this, go to your tool. Again, we're going to hit save. I will just overwrite that tool just to save the newest version of it. Yep, we'll replace that. And then we just want to hit the export key. Take a little second there just for it to go. Export. And just an OBJ format. Make sure it's given a different name from our plain one. So maybe call this Lantern High Poly Detailed. And just hit save, and that will export that out for you. Ready to go into Substance Painter, which we'll do in part 4. So I'm going to end the video here, but I'm going to keep detailing this up for part 4. Oh, still writing the OBJ file, which can take a while because we've got 5 million polys here. Just let that go. Yeah, that's it. If you have any questions about this process, please leave a wee question down below. We will finish this off in part 4 of the series. We're going to Substance Painter. We're going to take our low poly FBX mesh. That will be the one used in game. And we're going to apply these details from the high poly mesh that we've carved in ZBrush and just apply them on as texture data. So this 5 million poly version will never be seen in game. We're just going to strip some of the information and convert it to texture data instead. This appears to have frozen on me. Isn't that just perfect? We'll just wait for that to respond. So I think that's as good a time as any just to finish this video. As I say, play around with it. And, oh, there we go. We're all saved now. Play around with it. Just keep detailing up here. Get what you want. Add in wee scrapes and scratches, things like that. I wouldn't worry too much about these surface of the lantern because we can... we're going to add an emissive texture onto that later on anyway, so that'll just be kind of glowing bright. You'll not see any details on there. Just another thing to add, if you don't like ZBrush or if you don't have ZBrush, this stage isn't desperate, you know. We can add a lot of normal detail just straight onto Substance Painter without even doing this high poly ZBrush stage. You can do that, but you do tend to get a slightly better result if you're actually playing with the real polygons and making that real difference on the real surface of it in ZBrush. So with or without ZBrush, you get 95% the same result, but it can be a wee bit more awkward in Substance Painter. But yeah, we'll leave it there for now, and I'll see you in part 4. So thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed that.